Welcome back. The centre has tabled the Immigration and Foreigners Bill 2025 in the Lok Sabha, proposing an overhaul of India's immigration laws. While introducing the bill, Minister of State for Home Affairs Nityanand Rai said that the law will not restrict anyone from coming to India, but is aimed at boosting national security and replace colonial-era laws. The Congress, on the other hand, claims that the bill will give overarching powers to the state to deny entry to foreigners, namely refugees, under the garb of national security, claiming that the legislation violates multiple fundamental rights. The government has countered the charge, claiming robust laws are needed to tackle illegal immigration on multiple fronts, namely crack down on illegal migration rackets as well. Let's also give you an overview of the new immigration bill. What it proposes is a legislation that aims to end overlapping of multiple regulations. The current legislation is a mashup of multiple laws. That is, the Foreigners Act 1946, the Passport Act of 1920, the Registration of Foreigners Act 1939 and the Immigration Act of 2000. So the proposed legislation is in fact looking at adequate legal powers for the immigration officers. The current legislation also proposes that the Bureau of Immigration will be the one in the jurisdiction of all of this. There will be no explicit clause to deny any entry and even deport illegals. What has now been proposed in the legislation is the codifying denial of entry is on the grounds of security, and the current legislation actually goes on to talk about how the wording is considered as vague and powers are discretionary. The proposed legislation puts the onus on the education and medical institutions to inform authorities, whereas the current legislation in fact talks about a provision that was only recently included where the enforcement is still extremely vague. Now, the proposed legislation also obligates the carriers or the vessels to remove the illegals, and the current legislation, in fact, there is no provision via Immigration Act of 2000. So the question remains, given the threat of illegal immigration, given the turmoil in India's neighborhood, can this crucial reform be above petty politicking surrounding national security? That's the question I'm going to be posing to my guests today. Let me introduce my guests now. On that note, I'm joined in by Ms. Sanju Verma, who's the national spokesperson for the Bharatiya Janata Party, Mr. Charan Singh Sapra, who's the national spokesperson for the Congress Party, Satya Mule, who's a senior lawyer at the Supreme Court, and Mr. Manojit Mandal, who's a political analyst. Mr. Sapra, I want to ask you, when this is a bill that is now looking to pack all these loosely packed colonial era laws, one that is now marked, to only focus on national security, that too at a time when you're seeing how countries all over the globe, including the United States, are now cracking down on the issue of illegal immigrants. Why not let India do that?
See, the Congress party is just proposing, and they are saying that this bill, at the face of it, it looks as if it is potentially restrictive. It contradicts the constitution, and it also violates the fundamental rights. When I am saying it is potentially restrictive, I mean to say that in India, there are so many industries or there are so many companies which require the foreign inflow. Like the foreign expertise is required in many fields, in many industries. So this might restrict this foreign inflow into the country. And further, I would like to say that in this case, I feel there are apprehensions, there are some anomalies, and if the opposition is pointing it out, and what is the opposition saying? We are just demanding that let this bill go to the JPC.
Then Mr. Sapra, why did Mr. Manish Tiwari today on the floor of the House say that this is one bill that is creating greater potential for abuse? I want to know what abuse are you talking about? Secondly, also, why is it being labelled as legislative incompetence?
No, see, why legislative incompetence? That's what we are saying, that Manish Tiwari has quoted so many laws. He has quoted 17(1), he has quoted 19, he has quoted Rule 14 also. He has quoted everything. He has, whatever he has said, he has substantiated with the existing laws of the parliamentary system and existing laws under the constitution.
What's the abuse that you're talking about?
Let this
what
go
abuse?
to
What is the potential for abuse?
Look, see, these are see, when there is a wider discussion, Manish Tiwari was not allowed to speak for more than 5 minutes. Had the speaker allowed him to speak for more time, he would have given the detail. That's what we are saying. Let this go to the JPC. There will be a wider discussion, and if there are any anomalies, there are any apprehensions, that can be discussed out. Why the government wants to avoid that? Why the government wants to force these laws like they tried to force the farm law or the lateral entry bill or the data protection bill? They had to go back. And similarly, we feel that in this, whatever anomalies are there, it should be discussed. There's no harm in it.
All right. Now, Sanju Verma, you will have to answer two aspects to this. First of all, Manish Tiwari not being allowed to speak on the floor of the House. And secondly, there are concerns that this is also going to lead to human rights violations. Broad powers are being given to deny entry or detain without any appeal to risk violating these fundamental rights. This is what the critics, including the opposition, are arguing. How do you weigh in on that?
You know, first and foremost, Akanksha, let me make this very clear. Be it a Manish Tiwari or a Shashi Tharoor for that matter, this is basic common sense. You don't need to have the IQ of a rocket scientist to know this. Be it Article 14, 15, Article 19, 21, which are, you know, invoked by the opposition very conveniently at the drop of a hat. These pertain to fundamental rights and liberties of Indian citizens. They do not apply to foreigners. Point number one. Point number two. You said this in your introduction, but for the benefit of your audience, let me reinforce this. Which are the four legislations which the government seeks to abolish? The Passport Entry Act of 1920, the Registration of Foreigners Act of 1939, the Foreigners Act of 1946, and last but not the least, the Immigration Carriers Liability Act of 2000. Let's be very clear, Akanksha. All these four acts which I just spoke of, these pertain to before the Indian Constitution came into effect. They pertain to some of these, 3 out of these 4 acts pertain to even before India attained independence in 1947. So what did Nityanand Rai say? He said the government is not looking to suo moto usurp powers. All that the government seeks to do is that some of these legislations are outdated, date back to pre-constitution coming into effect, pre-independence period, and hence they need to be in sync with times. And tell me one thing, what is wrong if the government says that medical institutions, universities, private residences, educational institutions at large, if they feel that there is something untoward, they need to report a foreigner that they think is not towing the law, let them inform the authorities. So this is not the government usurping powers. This is the government empowering citizens, empowering universities, empowering colleges, empowering private individuals, empowering, medical institutions. Please come forward and share data so that the government can do the needful. But last but not the least,
let's hear what
for 20 seconds, please. Bear with me for 20 seconds. I just want to tell one thing. I want to leave your audience with this particular thought. The Indian Penal Code dating back to 1860, the government did away with that, and from July 2024, you had the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita come into effect. Citizenship Amendment Act of 1955 was replaced by the Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019. The Income Tax Act of 1961 is now going to be replaced by the new Direct Tax Code, which will be far more citizen-friendly. So the limited point I'm making is that outdated laws have no place in a Viksit Bharat, which is what our agenda is by 2047. And if we have to move towards that, we have to get rid of laws which are proving to be like dinosaurs.
Manojit, I want to bring you in because many critics are of the view that this should be a constitutional debate because this will also become a potential tool for the government to clamp down on all those who are dissenters and perhaps looking for an entry into the country.
Yes, absolutely. Let me, for the benefit of your viewers, read the Article 14, and which clearly says that my good friend from BJP was definitely misleading. It says the state shall not deny to any person equality before law or equal protection of laws within the territory of India. And the underlined is any person, not Indian citizen. And she has conveniently misled the people of India. And there lies the problem. I think that there should be deliberation on that. that whether any person who is entering even with valid visa passport, like studying in JNU or in my university, right, foreign students. So on the one hand, look at the paradox and hypocrisy, I should be saying. On the one hand, you are having foreign direct investment in education or in insurance right now, and on the other hand, you are restricting entry of these people even with valid visas, saying that suppose there is a crime against them or they are committing crime. If they are committing crime, they will be easily put behind bar. But if
Okay.
they are crime against these
Okay.
people, these
Sanju, I'm going
foreigners,
to give
these
you
people
a
will
rebut.
hang on, please let me. This is very important. Even with valid documents, this bill is saying that these people will not have any recourse to law because they are not Indian citizens. This is, I think, directly
Akansha.
infringing upon Article 14, which talks about equality before law of any person, not citizens, I repeat, residing within the territory of India.
Let's hear what
There
Sanju has
lies
to
the
say.
problem.
Okay, Sanju Verma.
Yes. Without beating around the bush, let me just say this to the TMC panelists. I never speak without facts at my disposal. I was not misleading. I repeat, the best example of what fundamental rights are all about. You need to read Article 1 and the preamble of the Constitution, which clearly says this applies to the citizens of India and not simply people who are residing within the territory of India. So please get that nuance correct. And let me say one thing to you, Akanksha. The West Bengal population today is around roughly 10 crore. And this is Mamata Banerjee's own confidant, the so-called mayor of Kolkata, Firhad Hakim. Till about 20 years back, for the last 12, 13 years, it's Mamata Banerjee who's been in power since 2011. The population of Muslims in West Bengal 20 years back was 1.2 crore. Today, the population of Muslims in West Bengal is 3.3 crore. The limited point I'm making is 33% of West Bengal's population constitutes of Muslims, and this is a 175% jump from 1.2 crore to 3.3 crore in barely 2 or 3 decades. And anybody
Okay.
who has an
Can I
IQ
rebut?
above 50
Okay.
knows that this is not organic growth.
Okay.
This is inorganic growth of a certain community.
Okay.
How did this happen, Manojit
Can I
Pandey?
rebut?
Okay,
It is because of
Manojit,
Rohingya.
I'll give you 30 seconds, but Satya, I
because
really
of good
appreciate your
nature.
patience. I'll have to go to Satya also. He's been awaiting his turn. Manojit, you wanted to come up with a rebuttal, please.
First of all, if you want to check infiltration, illegal immigrants, there are enough laws in this country. And these are being already named.
And this is one
Passport
such
Act.
law.
Please
This is
hang
one
on.
such law which
Why
will
are
come
you
into
still
effect.
misleading?
What's your
Why are you
problem?
still misleading?
What's your problem?
I mean,
Okay, Satya Mulya, I want to
Because the
bring you
problem
in.
is very
Satya,
simple.
Satya, I want to bring you in on the point that the Foreigners Act was already tracking, these people who were looking for a route illegally or perhaps were a threat to national security. So why is, instead of focusing on how this entire bill will be looking to fortify India's national security concerns, now talking about perhaps clamping down on dissenters who want a passage into the country?
Well, what happens is the 4 laws which the Congress spokesperson cited, as well as the other panelists cited, are pre-independence era, and they are not contemporary. They are not taking care of the technological advancements. They are not taking care of the new kind of security threats that exist. At the same time, the world has progressed. If we take, for example, any country, including any developing country, biometrics is an important part of security data gathering these days. And India still doesn't have any provision in any of these 4 acts for gathering of biometrics of all the immigrants. And it is a must these days, because what happens is without biometrics in place, without data in place, we cannot track overstaying, overjumping of visa duration. We cannot track trespassing of security threat elements from one country to another country. We cannot request from one country to another country demand of people who are wanted as a security threat. Having said all these things, all these 3 to 4 laws require overhaul. And therefore, this particular law that is coming into place is definitely something which is a requirement of the time. Apart from this, what happens is the penalties as well as the imprisonment that has been envisaged in the earlier
All right.
laws are so petty. They are just like 500 rupees penalty for overstaying and 3 months of imprisonment. This is not a deterrent. If there is no deterrent in a law, then that law is not actually serving the purpose for what it is implemented. Therefore, the implementation of new law, which is going to bring in imprisonment for 5 years and 3 years, or fines of up to 5 years, is a welcome move. And it does require, when India has porous borders with Myanmar and Bangladesh, it definitely is very important in context to
Charan Sapra, would you like to respond to that?
Demography of India.
Yeah. See, if like the spokesperson is now alleging that the borders are porous, and like the earlier BJP spokesperson she mentioned, I would like to say that by bringing in these laws, this government is trying to divert the attention from their own failures to stop infiltration.
All right, I think
it is Narendra Modi's government since 11 years. It is Narendra
this
Modi's
is a
government
country
since
which
11
has
years.
also this is also a country which has struggled to put David Coleman Headley to trial. I'm going to
and hide their failures.
Okay, I can't. I'll have to leave it at that. I'll have to leave it at that because I'm running short of time. But as I said, this is also a country which is now struggling to bring all the accused of various attacks that India has gone through to put them to trial. But I'm going to leave it at that. Many thanks to you all for joining in on the Hard Facts.